I remember a Tuesday afternoon about 8 years ago, sitting in my home office in Scottsdale with the blinds drawn, staring at a spreadsheet I couldn't focus on. I was 55 then. On the outside, life looked like a success story. I'd had the long career in sales, the travels, the executive titles. I was remarried to Alyssa, a woman who actually looked at me when I spoke, and I had a house that felt like a home. But inside, I felt like a fraud. I was dealing with a specific kind of silence that starts in the body and eventually moves into the head, taking up all the space. It was that feeling of knowing the equipment was failing and having absolutely no idea how to fix the internal logistics of it. If you're watching this and you've crossed that 50-year mark, you've probably felt that same static. It's not just about one bad night. It's about the slow, creeping realization that the reliability you took for granted for 3 decades is gone. You start playing a mental game of chess before you even get into bed, trying to calculate the odds, looking for excuses, or just hoping the topic doesn't come up. For a long time, I did exactly that. I played defense. I blamed the stress of closing a big contract. I blamed the heat in the desert. I blamed the fact that I was getting older. But deep down, I knew I was just managing a decline I didn't want to admit was happening. I remember going to a specialist back then, sitting on that crinkly paper in a cold office, hoping for an answer that didn't involve a prescription pad. He looked at my charts, checked my vitals, and gave me that line we've all heard. "You're within the normal range for a man your age." I hated that phrase. Normal for 55 seemed to mean broken but expected. He offered me the pills, the ones everyone knows, and for a while I took them. But they felt like a temporary patch on a burst pipe. They created this artificial high-pressure surge that didn't feel like me. It was like forcing an old engine to redline just to get out of the driveway. It didn't solve the underlying issue of the infrastructure itself. It just ignored the rust. The problem with most of the advice we get is that it's focused on the moment, not the maintenance. We're told to just take a pill and hope for the best, but nobody talks about why the system stopped responding in the first place. I spent a lot of my career in sales, looking at distribution networks and supply chains. If a warehouse isn't getting the product, you don't just send more trucks to the front gate if the roads leading there are washed out. You have to fix the roads. You have to rebuild the paths. And our bodies are no different. After 50, our internal roads, the tiny capillaries and blood vessels that make everything work, start to degrade. They get stiff, they get blocked, and eventually they just stop carrying the cargo. I started looking for a way to actually repair the roads, not just force more traffic through them. I wanted a way to return to a state where my body responded because it was healthy, not because it was being chemically forced. That's when I stumbled onto something that sounded like science fiction at first. It was the idea of using acoustic waves, basically high-frequency vibrations, to trigger the body into a state of self-repair. I'd heard about it being used for kidney stones, but I found out that some people were seeing incredible results using it on the pelvic infrastructure. I remember the first time I walked into a place that offered this. I felt that old familiar surge of hesitation, that Texas pride telling me I should just deal with it like a man. But I was tired of dealing with it by ignoring it. I sat down with a guy who understood the mechanics of it. He didn't talk like a coach or a guru. He talked like a mechanic. He explained that as we age, we lose the integrity of our blood vessels. The walls get damaged, the flow restricted, but these acoustic waves create what he called micro-trauma. Now that sounds bad, but in the world of biology, it's exactly what you want. It's a signal to the body that says, hey, we need to rebuild here. It triggers a process of creating new pathways, new capillaries. It's like clearing the debris off an old road and then laying down new pavement. I decided to go through a series of these sessions. It wasn't about a cure in a bottle. It was about a protocol of maintenance. The machine they used was an electro-pneumatic one, a big compressor that sent these waves deep into the tissue. It didn't hurt. It just felt like a deep, pulsing vibration. But the logic of it made total sense to me. We were essentially waking up the tissues that had gone dormant. We were forcing the body to invest in its own infrastructure again. It's called neovascularization, but to me, it just felt like I was finally performing the service interval my body had been screaming for since I turned 50. I remember about 3 weeks into the process, I was waking up in our house in Scottsdale, and for the first time in years, the morning report from my body was clear and consistent. It wasn't that forced, artificial feeling from a pill. It was natural. It was my own body responding because the plumbing was finally starting to clear up. I felt a sense of relief that I can't even fully describe. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to play defense anymore. I could just be present. I could look at Alyssa and not feel that immediate flash of, what if I can't? The mental static had gone quiet. Most men spend their 50s and 60s living in a state of quiet resignation. They think that because they're older, they just have to accept a version of themselves that is less than. They think the only options are pills or a slow fade into the background. But I'm 63 now, and I'm telling you, that's a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the vulnerability of trying something new. Your body is capable of incredible repair if you give it the right signals. It doesn't want to be broken. It just needs the logistics to work again. Think about it like an old irrigation system on a ranch back in Austin. If you don't maintain the lines, the field goes dry. You can pour as much water as you want into the main tank, but if the lines are clogged or broken, nothing grows. You have to go out there, clear the lines, and sometimes lay down new ones. That's what these acoustic waves do. They clear the plaque and they force the body to grow those new small capillaries. They bring the life back to the tissue. It's not a miracle, it's just good engineering. I had a friend of mine, a guy I used to work with in the city, who was going through the same thing. He was 58 and he'd basically given up. He'd moved into a spare bedroom, telling himself it was because his wife snored, but we both knew the truth. He was ashamed. I told him about what I'd found about the acoustic maintenance, and I could see the skepticism in his eyes. He thought it was some kind of next-gen gimmick, but eventually he tried it. About 2 months later, we were out grabbing a coffee, and he didn't even have to say anything. He walked differently. He looked younger. He told me, "Cole, I feel like I got a piece of my soul back." That's the thing people don't realize. This isn't just about a physical function. It's about your identity as a man. The truth is, many men aren't actually broken. They're just ignoring the wrong things. We spend so much time worrying about the result that we forget to take care of the process. We want the engine to run perfectly, but we haven't changed the oil or checked the spark plugs in a decade. If you're over 50, circulation matters more than pride. It's the baseline of everything. If the blood can't move, nothing else happens. And the beauty of this approach is that it's about rebuilding the health of the system, not just masking the symptoms. I've learned that confidence comes back when the body starts to respond again. It's a feedback loop. When you see that the maintenance is working, you stop worrying. When you stop worrying, the mental barriers fall. And when the mental barriers fall, everything works even better. It's about getting back to a state of flow. I used to think that getting older was a one-way street, a slow decline until the lights went out. But I've realized that it's more like a long-term contract. You have to keep showing up, keep doing the work, and keep being willing to look at the data. I'm not saying this is the only answer. I'm saying it's a piece of the puzzle that most doctors won't even mention to you. They'll give you a script and send you on your way because it's easy. But easy isn't always better. Sometimes the real solution requires you to step outside the standard routine and look at the actual mechanics of your body. It requires you to be an operator, not just a passenger. In my life now, I keep things simple. I wake up, I hydrate, I walk, and I stay mindful of my own internal infrastructure. I don't wait for things to break before I pay attention. I've realized that the quiet years don't have to be quiet. They can be full of vitality if you're willing to drop the pride and look at what's actually happening under the hood. I'm 63, and I feel more capable today than I did in that Chicago hotel room 12 years ago. Not because I found a fountain of youth, but because I stopped pretending there was nothing to find. If you're sitting where I was, feeling that frustration and that silent shame, I want you to know that you have options. You don't have to settle for normal for your age. You can choose to invest in your own repair. You can choose to fix the roads instead of just hoping the trucks get through. It takes a little effort, it takes a little research, and it takes the courage to admit that you want more out of life than a slow fade. I've spent my life in sales, and I know a good deal when I see one. Investing in the health of your own circulatory system, rebuilding the very foundation of your performance without relying on a chemical crutch, that's the best investment you'll ever make. It pays dividends in your confidence, your relationships, and your sense of self every single day. I don't have all the answers. I'm just a guy who's been down that road and decided I didn't like the destination. I chose to turn around and find a different path. And if I can do it, starting from a place of inconsistency and shame in Scottsdale, I know you can too. It's about starting the conversation with yourself first. It's about deciding that you aren't done yet. Take a look at your own logistics. Look at the flow. If things aren't moving the way they should, don't just ignore it. Do the maintenance, fix the infrastructure, Your body is waiting for you to lead the way. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.